Morning, Resurrection Church. Yesterday, we heard that doxology drives discipleship, that our worship of God, that understanding that we exist for the glory of God, actually gives us the kind of perspective we need to truly be disciples of God rightly. That it's not just good intentions for God, or even like that we say mentally, oh, God is highest in my life, but that we actually put him highest in a way that we show that by listening to what he says about life. And I've been thinking about a lot about that because over the last couple of years, God has really been impressing on my heart that where we're going is not as big a question to him as how we get there and who we're going to be on the journey. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that really God is not concerned about like outcomes, as if he's worried that the future of the world is in jeopardy or that the salvation of the lost is gonna fail to happen without us. It's actually that he has called us into this partnership with him. He's called us into this dependence on him where we serve him and worship him for our own good and for our understanding of and enjoyment of his glory. God is not in need of any resource that we bring to the table. He's not lacking anything. And so I've been realizing like how freeing and joyful it is to be a dependent disciple where he's put me and to pursue what he's called me to pursue, but with the kind of patience, humility, dependence that causes me to say, I'm going to do these good things in the way that God says is good. Or I'm going to go towards these good ends, these good destinations, these good goals in the way that God says is good, not just in the way that I think might be fastest. And that's a big difference. All right? So with your kids, with your spouse, with your workplace, a lot of us can easily be looking for the most practical strategy to get from point A to point B. And to realize that a lot of times when God throws a wrench in our plans, when he makes a twist in the story that we're not expecting, and suffering, trials, frustrations, it's easy for us to say to measure that in terms of like we're late. But really, God is working in those twists and turns in a way that we can still worship, because he's not been worried about the end, whether it's not going to happen or not. He is actually calling us to be the type of dependent, worshipful disciples in the midst of that are trust him enough to be faithful in the twists and turns, in the pressure and the pleasure. So I hope you'll think about this. How will my worship of God look this week in the three most important areas of my life? In my closest relationships, my family, my workplace, how will being for the glory of God express itself? Remember that illustration my dad used yesterday about if we were taking my mom out for lunch and saying we want to honor her, and then we take her to, he didn't say it out there, but Ponderosa or one of those buffets, Old Country Buffet or something like that. She doesn't like buffets. So if we were doing that, it wouldn't be for her. And that is something that I think is worth reflection, is how are we going to go beyond the idea of like, oh yeah, we're making God a part of our week, to say, I have actually considered what God desires in these parts of my week. That I want to hear from him in his word. I want to talk with him and depend on him in prayer. And then I want to show that he's the most important person in every room, the most important voice in every conversation to me. I'm praying for you this week. I hope that's something that's on your heart as we all think about how our worship will fuel our discipleship.